Phew. That's a relief. 2 out of 4 of the BBC's own correspondents on Radio 4's Today on January 2 forecast that the British economy would be looking up by the end of this year. They all agreed that it could certainly be made to look that way. The rest of us calculated our post-Christmas overdrafts and gasped at the rise in the price of a train ticket. The value of informed opinion, however, has never been higher. All last week, David Attenborough, the nation's favorite secular Santa, delivered daily parcels of experience and insight on Book of the Week, reading his adventures of a young naturalist on Radio 4. This was a new version, not the one recorded years ago when the BBC published its own radio collections. How good it was, though, to hear his voice from back in the 50s when this, his first TV series, was made, beside his older voice. James Burke on the end of Scarcity, Radio 4, Boxing Day, repeated New Year's Day, was another voice from television's golden past. Remember Burke on Tomorrow's World, pointing out ways to the future? Here he packed a complicated argument into half an hour, making us concentrate on every stage, shiver at his conclusions. Scarcity is not a bad thing, he began. Throughout history it has driven innovation, in technology, industry, institutions, government. Soon nanotechnology will abolish scarcity as each of us makes everything we need or want, machinery to air, from molecules. Within 50 years, he forecast, there'll be no more factories, trades, jobs, money. This listener real? Burke carried on arguing, how do we define ourselves if not by work? And, he added, if nothing is scarce, what is value? Then, the Burke killer punch, transition to a time of universal abundance is something we should be planning for right now. So bold was his argument, so beauty and minimally illustrated by producer Peter McManus, that all this listener could do was glimpse a few holes in it before escaping into her own prediction of not being around long enough for it all to become a problem. Credit: BBC correspondents look ahead. Radio 4, Friday, repeated Saturday, was equally bracing. We're used to hearing BBC correspondents James Naughtie, Lisa Doucet, James Robbins, Carrie Gracie, and Kevin Connolly. But there was a welcome newcomer here too, Yolanda Knell, Middle East correspondent. Daddy Owen Bennett-Jones kept them all on a tight tether, or at least tried to, as Naughtie, special correspondent, kept breaking in on everyone else's territory and trying, usually in vain, to steer the discussion. Meanwhile, Connolly predicted trouble for the EU from East European members Poland and Hungary. Robbins foresaw a mass evacuation of soldering in North and South Korean confrontation, and Knell nominated the Nigerian women's bobsleigh team in next year's Olympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea, as her one to watch. At this, Bennett-Jones gasped, I warned Knell. Credit: BBC. Lisa Doucet was the star of Pen Pals, Radio 4, all last week. Produced by Deborah Dudgeon for Imaginative Independence. Whistle Down. Here were familiar radio voices: Fi Glover, Lem Sissay, Jim Al-Khalili, Louisa Patikas, aka Helen of the Archers, reading letters to different people, not all of whom were known to them. Doucet's pen pal was, though, it was someone she'd met years ago in Afghanistan, Masood Khalili, a fighter then, a diplomat now, a poet still. In August, when this correspondence began, he replied from America. His son was in hospital there, awaiting surgery for cancer. She wrote back, from Damascus, concerned, sympathetic. Their exchanges talked of war, of hope, of friendship. Hers were written as she hopped round the world, always at work, never out of touch. He remained at his son's bedside in Virginia where, by late November, hope came at last. Every day this week on Radio 4 at 9 a.m., Doucet marks the centenary of women's voting rights, and her story made history. Conversations with remarkable campaigners, such as Monica McWilliams, Monday, who fought for women to have a voice in Northern Irish politics, and was one of 2 women at the negotiating table for the Good Friday Agreement. Yesterday, Doucet met Matika Al-Irish, a fighter for the right of Saudi women to drive, a battle she's now won. It still isn't easy for women broadcasters to sound both authoritative and approachable. News dispatches. Doucet's voice can be so terse listeners fear the worst. That's the nature of news, and she's a first-rate reporter. Programs like Pen Pals and Her Story acquaint us with her better, make us not just hear but listen, understand, remember.